At its peak, the bridge stands taller than the Burj Khalifa, rises 9 times higher than the Golden Gate Bridge, and weighs as much as 2 Eiffel Towers, spanning roughly the length of Washington, D.C.'s National Mall. China is building a hell of a bridge. Located in a rugged yet rapidly transforming region of the People's Republic, this soon-to-open travel route promises to slash commuter times by 99%, generate new opportunities for prosperity, and even break some world records. But what lies behind this monumental project? Is everything as seamless as it appears? Got its sheer scale and innovative design, the project has encountered significant challenges. What are the problems faced during its construction, and what creative solutions have been devised to overcome them? Well, let's take a look, shall we? Welcome to Huajiang. Building bridges. So what exactly is Huajiang Canyon Bridge? Well, in short, it is an enormous suspension bridge located in Guanling, Bui, and Miao Autonomous County near Anshun City in the Chinese province of Guizhou. This impressive structure spans the top of the Huajiang Canyons, connecting 2 mountains, while the Beipanjiang River, also known as the Huajiang River, winds its way through the valley below. And it's truly massive. Once opened in the second half of 2025, the bridge will stretch almost 3 kilometers in length. But that isn't the most impressive aspect. What really stands out is its height. The bridge's floor will be a staggering 625 meters above the river's surface, while the 2 towers that support the suspension cables soar an additional 262 meters. This design will break the world record for the highest bridge when it opens to the public, with the previous record held in the same province. A true modern-era monolith, the structure stands about 200 stories tall, with the gap from the river to its very top being even taller than the Burj Khalifa. And it's not just big, it's real heavy. The colossal concrete and steel structure weighs around 22,000 tons, making it a bit heavier than 2 Eiffel Towers. Its main span stretches 1,420 meters and is made up of 93 individual steel truss sections, each moved into place one at a time over an extended period. The final section was added in January 2025. Considering that construction only started in early 2022, that is an impressive timeline for a bridge of this size. And to be fair, it has to be big. A whopping $300 million price tag is not exactly pocket change. Thousands of workers have already been involved in its construction. From planners, civil engineers, and architects to construction workers, welders, and riveters, everyone on site played a crucial role in moving this massive complex project forward. But this isn't just some big, ordinary bridge. When you look deeper and examine the incredibly innovative techniques used in its construction, you realize it might represent less of a singular infrastructure project and more of a giant leap in our collective technological capabilities. Now, that's a big claim, so let me clarify what I mean. For a number of reasons, getting 93 separate massive steel trusses to align perfectly on a superstructure suspended hundreds of meters in the sky is not an exact science. Individual mistakes, weather conditions, temperature fluctuations, incompetence, and more can all lead to the trusses being installed less uniformly than the Chinese government would like. They don't want their new $300 million world record-breaking bridge to have any risk of collapse. Because of this, the Chinese engineers had to get creative in ensuring construction reliability. They achieved this by extensively integrating a host of cutting-edge technologies to address age-old problems with modern solutions. One of the first and most important technologies developed on-site was the world's largest span cable hoisting system, essentially a crane with 4 lines descending from an elevated position on the bridge. It can even move in any direction along the structure to achieve precise, reliable assembly. But that's not all. Not only is this the largest version of its kind, but it's also satellite navigated, with distinct coordinates programmed for each specific task. Li Zhao, the project's chief engineer, explained how this works. Quoting them, "When designated coordinates are entered, the system automatically positions the crane at the specific location, reducing the workload for operators. While traditional cable crane operations require 8 workers, we have to reduce that number to 4. This setup ensures that the crane was positioned exactly right every single time, with as few deviations as possible. At the same time, more than 30 high-definition cameras, along with numerous sensors scattered around, provide real-time data on any activity occurring on or near to the bridge. Despite all the fuss, the operation turned out to be remarkably successful. In the words of the chief engineer, during on-site assembling, we followed a predetermined sequence, achieving 100% accuracy in aligning bolts with their designated holes." End quote. There were several other highly technological aspects of the build. The entire production process incorporated extensive digital management tools, monitoring raw materials, running virtual simulations, employing scanning technology, and utilizing 3D design work, all to check ahead of time and establish a clear, organized picture of how the bridge would be assembled. Depending on who you ask, they may have even used artificial intelligence to assist with various elements of the project. It wasn't exactly a run-of-the-mill transport system, rather the heavy integration of digital technology into such a large infrastructure project is highly significant. Did this project introduce anything entirely new? No, not really, but when taken together, it demonstrates the true efficiency that integrated tech can add to mega projects everywhere. It's no exaggeration to say that this project is as cutting-edge as technology gets, with mechanized, jig-like machines capable of reliably accomplishing complicated construction tasks with regular human oversight. One day, this kind of technology could be ubiquitous, laying the groundwork for building larger and better projects than ever before. But did the Chinese government construct such a technologically advanced, record-breaking bridge merely for fun, or does the bridge serve a more significant purpose than just being a superlative? Well, let's figure it out. Growth, economics, and bungee jumping. So here's a question for you about this bridge. Why? Why invest so much effort, expense, and materials just to reduce one road's commute from over an hour to just a couple of minutes? Well, just off the bat, the best reason of all is just because they could. Can you build a bridge that size? Didn't think so. China's well known for tackling infrastructure projects at scales and extremes that no one's tried before. Beijing's position in world politics is firmly established and widely understood, and China is a nation of builders and innovators. They create things no one has seen before and sell those innovations to you and me. When your entire business model is look how good we are at building stuff, you should definitely ask for their help in building. And that is exactly what the Belt and Road Initiative is about. It helps to have a few grand, impressive projects of your own to serve as proof. China has plenty of these. A great example is the Three Gorges Dam, an enormous project that shows that when it comes to infrastructure, no one does scale like Beijing. And if another country wants a leg up in the infrastructure game but can't afford it, Chinese financing and construction expertise is right there to help, wanted or not. So it's more than merely saying big bridge is big. It's international marketing and branding on the largest scale imaginable, where both spectacle and competence sell in abundance. After all, you're not only watching a video about it, you're also part of its creation as we make a video about it. But to be fair to the Chinese engineers and planners, this bridge was needed. Was it necessary on this scale? Maybe not, but the Chinese have never let practicality get in the way of a good bridge. Guizhou Province, the location of the canyon, Huajiang, and the bridge is not an easy place to live. The area is incredibly mountainous and rugged, with 92.5% of its land covered by mountains and hills. Bridges have enabled the province to become more connected to the rest of China over time. If you want traffic to go somewhere, you have to build roads between places, and when there are very large elevation changes, you build bridges. And boy, has Guizhou built bridges. Since the 70s, 30,000 bridges have been erected. Over roughly 50 years, that amounts to over 600 bridges are built a year. That's one per day on average. Moreover, due to the high-altitude terrain and dramatic elevation changes, Guizhou is now home to nearly half the world's 100 tallest bridges. The Beipanjiang Bridge, built in 2003 and located in the same province, held the world record until the new bridge enters service. Building bridges like this brings transport, infrastructure, money, business, and people to regions that were previously out of economic work. Once that connection is established, change happens quickly. For instance, to travel between the two mountainous peaks where the bridge now stands will be reduced to just 1 minute or two. If that isn't transformative, we're not really sure what is. Such change can be incredibly beneficial for isolated communities. Huajiang Town, a tiny settlement so small that no picture of exists online, is one such community located in the area where the bridge will soon be built. Back in 1961, the newly built Huajiang Bridge opened as a part of the Provincial Highway 214, connecting Anshan with Xijiang Prefecture. The connection ushered in a period of prosperity for the small hamlet in a relatively rugged and rural part of China at the time. The town's party secretary, Yang Xiuying, commented, quote, "Many visitors pass through Huajiang. We had around 130 restaurants, each capable of earning up to 2,000 yuan or $281 per day per family, not to mention the hotels." For China in the 60s, this was quite impressive. It begs the question, if one area could flourish economically, why not replicate that success on a larger scale across several provinces? And that's exactly what China is doing. Guizhou province now boasts a total expressway length of over 9,000 kilometers and more than 220,000 kilometers of roadways, with a significant portion of the network made possible by its many bridges. The Lujiang-Anlong Expressway is just one example of these highways, and once opened, the Huajiang Canyon Bridge will connect directly to it via road. This represents a significant opportunity for the entire surrounding area to receive a substantial economic boost. With far more access to remote areas, their unique landscapes, and abundant resources, the region stands to gain in multiple ways. It also highlights how Guizhou province has emerged from relative poverty, showcasing the remarkable transformation since it became more interconnected. In this context, the Huajiang Canyon Bridge serves as one of the final pieces in a 30,000-piece puzzle that has been coming together over half a century. And that's a puzzle that would need a really big box. Even local government officials agree that the bridge alone will have a real impact. Chen Jianlei, the deputy director of the Guizhou Transport Department, discussed the potential economic benefits of the bridge, stating, "The completion of the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge will strengthen economic ties between Guiyang, Anshun, and Shijinyang, fostering regional economic integration." Undoubtedly, an attraction like the highest bridge in the world is also sure to bring some tourism to the area. There are other nearby sites such as the famous Huangyaoshu waterfall, and the bridge itself is expected to become a major tourist hotspot. Not only will it dazzle visitors with its spectacle, but it will also offer some pretty cool amenities. Planned features include scenic spots, viewing areas, and even a glass sightseeing elevator that will likely transport you to the top of the concrete towers. Once you're there, you could enjoy a refreshing drink at the rooftop bar or savor a meal in the restaurant while taking in the breathtaking views. And if you ever feel that the contents of your stomach no longer appeal to you and you'd rather have the outside, you might consider the ultimate thrill and throw yourself off this massive bridge. Purely for fun, of course. Many of China's largest bridges are popular spots for base jumping or bungee jumping, and the Huajiang Canyon Bridge seems tailor-made for extreme sports, given its altitude and height. It is bound to attract adrenaline junkies throughout the year. Overall, the why here is pretty obvious. It made sense domestically, internationally, and economically in the long run. It serves as both a spectacle for other nations and a tourist attraction in its own right. When you look at it from that perspective, the decision really is a no-brainer. However, don't be misled into thinking that constructing the world's highest bridge can be done flawlessly without encountering any challenges. So, what are those challenges, and what measures have the engineers on the ground taken to address them? A bridge too far. Now, as you can imagine, building the world's highest suspension bridge in a geologically and environmentally unstable region over a massive ravine has presented its fair share of challenges. The bridge's immense height and its interaction with the surrounding natural environment have been the primary obstacles for the Chinese engineers so far. Because the Huajiang Canyon Bridge towers high above the canyon floor, it is subject to fierce winds that rush between its hills every day. This not only made constructing the bridge safely a major challenge, but it also raised concerns about how these high winds might affect the structure in the years to come. Thankfully, the Chinese have never let adverse weather stand in the way of an impressive engineering feat. To ensure a safe construction process, engineers installed wind monitoring equipment atop the mountains on either side of the valley. This allowed them to collect vital meteorological data in real time, enabling the construction team to avoid the canyon's worst winds throughout the building process. And that's pretty smart, and the way they built the bridge to contend with Mother Nature for years after its construction, actually even more ingenious. For starters, the design minimizes its surface area as much as possible, as seen with the steel truss sections. The smaller the surface area, the less the wind is going to affect the bridge. They might argue that the massive concrete columns rising high into the sky don't exactly shrink the surface area, and you'd actually be at least partially right. However, because these columns are hollow, the wind interacts with them differently than they would with a single massive flat piece. But that ain't all. The concrete used for this project wasn't your average bag and pour mix that you'd find on any construction site today. Oh no, instead it was deliberately mixed with a higher proportion of cement. Since cement is quite dense, this made the mix heavier than usual. Combine that with copious amounts of rebar, and you end up with two very large concrete structures that are exceptionally strong, able to bear considerable weight and withstand the high winds of the canyon. Okay, great. Well, that's the wind sorted, but if you ask the Chinese engineers about the redundancies built into the bridge for the rest of the weather cycle, they might start tugging nervously at their collars. While there are several measures in place to help the bridge endure in the long term, the built-in safeguards aren't nearly as extensive as one might expect, given the potential challenges any structure faces in this region, especially one that weighs twice as much as the Eiffel Tower. Take rain and temperature changes, for example. Weather patterns are shifting worldwide, growing stronger and increasingly unpredictable. China, in particular, experiences extreme heat waves. With so much steel incorporated into the bridge's key components, the constant expansion and contraction caused by heat and moisture could, over time, weaken the structure. Moreover, the varying weather conditions made assembly a challenge. The different truss sections wouldn't always align perfectly. Fortunately, a satellite-connected smart cable crane was able to provide the precise hoisting needed to ensure that everything fell perfectly into place. As this is so high up, the bridge is subject to quite drastic temperature changes. When it cools, the metal contracts, and over time, this repeated cycle could shake a few bolts loose. Experiencing extremes at both ends of the weather cycle isn't the worst thing, as long as proper maintenance and inspections are in place, but it's definitely something the engineers likely had to consider. Now add the possibility of large thunderstorms due to high humidity, and you've got plenty of room for chaos in Mother Nature's toolbox. Besides anti-corrosion coatings and a few other measures, there aren't a ton of safeguards to ensure the bridge gets looked after in the long run. Sometimes shit happens, details fall through the cracks, bridges disappear from databases, and decades later a once-trafficked structure becomes dilapidated and dangerous because nobody checked in on it. If that were to happen here, and if the Chinese authorities don't keep up with maintenance, the bridge could slowly become very, very dangerous. Bridge collapses in China, certainly nothing new, so hopefully past incidents have taught them how to prevent this from happening, especially with this absolutely massive bridge. But if you thought the sky was bad, well, the ground ain't doing the bridge any favors either. For a start, it's located amid the historical epicenters of some of the strongest earthquakes ever to strike China. Karst landscapes, like those in the Guizhou province, are prone to erosion, landslides, and water infiltration, none of which is good for the sensitive balance of life in the area. A significant earthquake in just the right spot could cause devastating destruction, especially for a bridge of this magnitude. Moreover, if such a disaster were to upend the short commute across the valley, the local regions and their communities would revert to their former isolation. I'm sure the bridge has been built with every eventuality in mind, but you can't shake the feeling that a strong enough quake could tear it apart. There's also a more nuanced look at the investment and tourism angle we can take. It's completely true that building this bridge will draw people to Guizhou and Huajiang like never before, saying otherwise would be silly. But for how long will this influx last? After all, this is bridge country. With thousands of bridges in the region, what's to stop another one from being built in the future and diverting all of that money and tourism elsewhere? After all, those tourists and that funding have to come from somewhere, and this is exactly what happened to Huajiang Town. When the previous world's largest bridge, the Beipanjiang Bridge, was completed in 2003, the relative prosperity that Huajiang Town had once enjoyed was abruptly cut short. The new bridge opened up a faster route that no longer required vehicles to stop in Huajiang, so most began to bypass the town entirely. This diversion caused significant economic difficulties, leaving behind fewer visitors, customers, and opportunities for local businesses. In 1961, Huajiang Town was home to 130 restaurants. Shortly after the 2003 bridge opened, the number dropped to just 30. In other words, 77% of them had closed during that period. While not every closure could be directly attributed to the bridge's opening, many locals certainly see that connection. This situation starkly illustrates how an area can be completely at the mercy of the next government project. Even with the construction of a new bridge, long-term economic growth is far from guaranteed. The upcoming bridge is set to bring the region back into the black once again, a positive sign for Huajiang. But one must wonder which town or settlement might suffer and be bypassed, just as Huajiang once was 2 decades ago. And it raises the question, is Beijing truly interested in creating prosperity, opportunity, and wealth for its more rural citizens, or is it just moving money around, one bridge at a time? Maybe that's a bit cynical, but in the short term, the bridge will undeniably help transform Huajiang and Guizhou into more integral parts of an increasingly interconnected China, a transformation that has been steadily underway for some time now. Perhaps this marks the final piece of a macro-scale puzzle, though one that offers little comfort to the many communities left behind. Those communities will either have to relocate or hope a bridge of their own appears someday, and the cycle just continues onwards. The world's highest bridge today. So, what's the status of the Huajiang Canyon Bridge today? Well, as we mentioned earlier, it's scheduled to open in the second half of this year, 2025. It won't be long before countless drivers cross it daily while thrill seekers visit and even jump off it for fun. Back in January, workers held a small ceremony right on the bridge to commemorate the placement of the last truss, marking a significant milestone in its construction. Work continues steadily. The road is being laid, the suspension cables are still being wrapped, some sections still need to be painted, and the minor visitor facilities must be installed. There's certainly more work to be done. However, aside from any monumental events at this stage, the Canyon Bridge will be completed, delivering all the promised benefits to the locals who'll be affected by it. And more than anything, the bridge is a symbol, a striking emblem of Guizhou's transformation in recent years. In just a few decades, the province has evolved from a largely isolated rural backwater into an integrated and interconnected society, rapidly advancing both economically and socially. Beyond its hilly exterior, Guizhou has become significant for hydropower in China. The region now attracts large tech companies, with one of the state's own data centers even being built into a cave there. As a hub for both data and green energy, these sectors are poised for continued growth as time marches on. This development, in theory, secures the province's prospects for the foreseeable future, though only time will tell what comes next. Chief Engineer Li Zhou summed up his feelings about the project with these words: "Witnessing my work becoming something tangible, watching the bridge grow day by day and finally stand tall above the canyon gives me a profound sense of achievement and pride." Thank you for watching.